Good afternoon, everyone. All right, GDS. This is one of my favorite topics because it's still such an unknown, which is actually shocking that it's still such an unknown. And I feel like I need to tell this fun fact. Is John Burns in the room anywhere? I probably can't see him if he is raising his hand. There he is. John's going to keep me honest, but when I first became HEDNA president, I met John and a couple other former HEDNA founders and presidents. And HEDNA was actually, of course, founded by hoteliers for hoteliers. But for those of you that are new to HEDNA, it was, I believe, 7 hotel companies. And then there was 1 representative from the GDSs and 1 representative from the travel agent community. So we've come a long way. But obviously, GDS is still an important channel for hoteliers. I personally, when I got to MGM, my boss said, "What can this channel do for us?" And I easily was able to just, refresh the content and put rates in there that were actually bookable, and it generated a bunch of additional revenue. So let's meet the panelists. I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves and talk about your role at your company.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Conti. I am the Regional Director for Lodging Supply for the Americas at Sabre. So my team oversees all distribution agreements with all of the chains and organizations that are based in North and South America. I also oversee a lot of the GDS media business that we have. Prior to my Sabre time, I spent about 7-8 years at Expedia. And then prior to that, I was property level revenue management with Starwood for about 4 or 5 years.
And good afternoon, Ross Vinograd with Travelport, and I head up hotel, car, and digital media propositions, which effectively is commercial strategy and product marketing, both for the demand side, how we engage our supply, our demand side partners from OTAs to brick and mortar travel agencies to corporate booking tools to mobile only, as well as to how we upgrade the content that we're acquiring from everybody from Hilton to Hertz to Avis, and then the digital media component that layers on top of all of that.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Katja Bohnet, and I'm Global Head of Hotel Distribution. And as you can hear from my accent, I'm the only non-American here. So please excuse if I do some strange turns and grammar mistakes. So as you can hear, I'm German, but I've been living for 16 years now in Madrid. So German efficiency meets Spanish improvisation. It's a little bit what Amadeus is all about. So we have this global company, and we have so many different cultures in there, so it's really an interesting place to work. So I wanted to give you a fun fact about myself, so that you get to know me a bit better. So this is actually a bit embarrassing, and not many people know that about me. I grew up in a small village in Germany, in the Black Forest, and there was probably not that much to do there. So I was kind of a hard, heavy metal groupie. So when I was quite young, so when I was a teenager, that's probably because all the cute and cool guys were in a band. So that was funny because it was like really the death metal, so it's more grunting and shouting than singing. But the headbanging was great. So as my taste in music evolved, and I think this is puts us into the topic. So also I think what we've done, the GDS, is we've evolved away from just being a GDS, at least at Amadeus we did. We became a travel platform, meaning that we now connect all types of content, any types of connectivity to aggregate and then standardize the content and distribute it through all different points of sale. In our case, this is Amadeus selling platform. So the platform that the travel agency use to book, the professional booking platform, as well as our self-booking tool, Cytric Travel and Expenses, or any type of other travel agency platforms through an API or third-party booking tools. And all of that, I have to mention that as well, we've done moving away completely from the mainframe, now running fully on open systems. So we're the first travel provider to do so.
Awesome. Thank you to our panelists. I have a feeling Katja is going to enjoy the 90s cover band tonight.
Yeah, I'm preparing my glitter.
All right, we're going to start out with, we're going to have one slide. This is my favorite slide. Everywhere I go, I put this slide up on the screen. This slide is from TravelClick, and it talks about it's just a simple slide, right, with the historical year-over-year performance in the GDS. And everybody always says to me, Sarah, I don't understand. There's a reduction in travel agents. How can GDS bookings continue to increase every single year? So let's just start out with the basics. Who's still booking the GDS?
Who is not?
Oh, there you go.
Well, I'd be a bit provocative about it because I think we actually increased the amount of GDS bookers by including more content, making it more standardized, ensuring that you have also a product that is good for a leisure travel agency, as well as for a corporate travel agency that changes their sourcing ways as well. We've made sure that we could actually distribute to way many point of sales. So and I think that is visible in the stats now, that we are increasing the amount of travel agents that work with us.
Yeah, I guess to add in there, I think a lot of us expected the online world to sort of eat the offline world. And if you look, I guess, geographically across here, in the Americas is about like 54% online. I think Europe is a bit ahead of us. APAC in some regions is leapfrogged, but Middle East and Latin America are still, I think Latin America is like only 30% online. They've got quite a ways to go. Not only is the online adoption, I don't think, eaten the world, but I think the agencies still have a real role to play when you look across even like the millennial and new startups like Lola, not necessarily new as it just got acquired, but they're trying to integrate the agent back into the workflow. And I think to Katja's point, we've obviously done something right at the GDS. I think we've really lowered the on-ramp for agencies with the user interface upgrades, with the content, with the usability. And I think a lot of our platforms today, you'd say, that's retailing content in an agency environment. And I think there's other elements to speak to as to why we're sticking around. I think there's also the middle and the backware component. That's a technological trench that is just hard to jump over for a lot of competitors. I mean, that's a base of 30 years there.
Yeah, and all great points, and I agree with everything that Ross and Katja said, but I think too, just a simple, hotels and corporations need a way to manage and distribute their negotiated rates and manage their corporate programs, and that still is the GDSs. That's the core functionality of that. And looking through some of these trends, I also think that I would love to say that it's all a byproduct of just the GDS is evolving, which I think we all have done, but I also think there's just an inherent economic benefit. We've been, as Jan talked about earlier, in a nice economic upturn for the last 10 years. And as business continues to be strong and the economy continues to be strong, people travel for business. And when things go down, the first thing to get cut is your travel budget, and you'll start doing everything via WebEx. So I think we're getting some nice tailwinds just from some of that as well. But of course, we are doing a lot of work on the back end to make it more streamlined, more efficient, and all that stuff.
So let's continue down this path of who's booking in the GDS, and let's talk a little bit about corporate booking tools. So I was, when we had a pre-call, I was telling the panelists I went to Bali in November, and I actually was searching for flights, and I decided to look in MGM. We use Concur, right? I'm looking in MGM, and I'm like, holy cow, this flight, like literally compared to, it was Qatar, brand.com, I was like, this is $300 cheaper, obviously, because we have negotiated rates. And I was really happy that I booked through the corporate booking tool, because when my flight got delayed, and it was quite the trip to try and get there, I was notified by American Express, like, hey, your flight's delayed. So let's talk about corporate booking tools. You mentioned Lola. We have Trip Actions, who I think is in the room. There's a lot of conversation going on about, who's going to be the next player in that business managed travel. So where do you see this going?
It's a great question. This was not one of our approved questions that we talked about in the brief, so I'm going to wing this one. But I actually think, there's a lot of room for disruption, and there's a lot of players in the market. I think that what Trip Actions and what Lola and a lot of these companies are doing is they're doing a great job listening to the needs of the end traveler and the corporations and the consumers. And they're identifying very basic pain points and roadblocks that corporations are facing, that TMCs are facing, and they're saying, we can fix that. And that is what's driving investment and funding and the growth of these companies. And I think there's still a lot of work to be done in the corporate travel space and in the managed business travel space. Who I think is going to win, if that's kind of where we're going. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. I'd love to get in on that.
In some cases you think somebody already won. I mean, right? There's sort of the scope of competition right now. It's almost a breath of fresh air to see these guys coming in right now and competing. And I think the way they're doing it is novel in ways that, in some cases save the corporations some money, put it back into the traveler's pocket as a thank you. I think those commercial models are honestly a breath of fresh air, and so hopefully they'll continue duking it out in that market, because even when and obviously we all have our own platforms, but it can get better, and I think we look to the leisure market to set a pace of what, in some cases, good looks like and what personalized travel can become, and I don't even think that's perfect yet. So there is a trajectory and a journey we're on here, but I think the corporate booking tool market is sort of the last bastion, and I think the innovation that's happening now is fantastic from our perspective, and we're excited to sort of to help it out with obviously the content and the investment that we're doing on our platform.
Yeah, to me, it's not that much a question of who is going to win. I think there's space for everyone. I think it's interesting that there's so many new models, and our value will be to help those players be successful, because in the end, what we all want is to ensure that the travel agencies, the corporations are taken care of, no? And then there's the end-to-end integration that they can service perfectly their traveler. Because in the end, our customers are the travel agencies, but in the end, the end consumer, no? And we need to look, what does the end consumer want? And we need to cater for that.
I'm going to pivot back to the approved question list. And let's talk about technology. So I'm going to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate GDS technology today, and why are you rating it the answer that you're going to give?
Should I start, or you want to start?
Right ahead.
Of course, I have to say 10, no? I have to say 10, what else? So for us, at least at Amadeus, we invested heavily in the 3 main items, though. One is content standardization to ensure that you can actually compare apples to apples, and we did that through machine learning. The second point, in our different point of sales, our own point of sales, or creating that connectivity to other point of sales, that was really important, such, for example, those booking tools, self-booking tools, because what we feel is we can also be a content provider to them, we can help them along. And the third one is then we heavily invested into the connectivities into our platform, no, to ensure that now any type of content provider can connect to us, or we make it easier, no longer this standardized form that you edifact that you had to connect to us in a certain way, but we really made sure that it's easier for any content provider to connect to us. So that's why I believe that we really are on top of what technology currently provides.
So I would also say, I think, look, it's a varied landscape. So in some cases, performance, bookability, speed, we knock it out of the park, and we continue to knock it out of the park. Yeah. On areas like content, look, spade a spade, I think the market's leapfrogged us for reasons there that are important to uncover. I think our relationship as a GDS is with the chains. When the OTAs went out and started building their content in order to rank and play the Google algorithm in that game and to sort of, jump and leapfrog there, what was happening was they were actually going and building relationships at the property level, and it was a leapfrog game that was happening between revenue managers playing with booking channels, the same game of Google of who can rank highest. And it wasn't necessarily an economic game, it was who had the latest image, who could name the voltage on a hairdryer. And from our perspective, we just simply don't maintain an army of market managers to procure that content. And I think that was a miss on our part early on when that started happening. And I think even the hotel chains will say that's a miss on their part, because in some cases, brand.com looks worse than OTA.com. And I think it's incumbent, if we want to all compete and have a level playing field and bring the experience to the traveler that is ultimately everyone's goal, that parity be considered and be brought back in some way.
Yeah, I will give us a 7. I mean, I think we've come a long way from a technology perspective as a GDS community in general, but I think that there's still a long way to go. To kind of Ross's point, some of the content pieces, you know, we're also limited to or by some of the more legacy systems with the CRSs that connect into us. And so we are working within an environment where there are inherent roadblocks and challenges. And to kind of mirror what the last panel was talking about is there isn't a standardization. Even something as simple as a room type code is returned differently from every single supplier. And not only that, the images associated with those room tapes have different codes. And so we've got to get to a place, I think, as an industry where we can agree on some standards, and as we're evolving and moving forward, kind of cleaning some of that stuff up so that we can compete with the army of market managers and new technology and things that are coming into the marketplace.
So let's talk about that a little further for a second. So if the hoteliers in the room, I get actually a couple of emails a year going, do you know anybody that knows GDS? And I'm like, you're not stealing my GDS person. She's 1 in a million. She's not available. I'll pay her every time that she's worth, right? So it's really hard to find somebody that knows GDS. So let's talk about kind of where do you see the technology going in a few years, right? Envisioning the future being our theme. Where are we going? How are we going to make it easier for hoteliers? And what do we need to do to fix this? Is it on the central reservation companies? Do we need to partner more with HDNG to create standards? You know, one thing that I say as I'm departing as president and I'm moving into my next phase, and I talked about with the new president, is we do a great job on stage talking about what the issues are, but we don't do a great job solving some of these issues. So where is the future of GDS from a technology perspective, and how is it still is that kind of difficult channel to manage, right, from a hotelier's perspective. So what's it look like in 3 to 5 years?
So I think from our end, it starts getting a lot simpler in terms of onboarding new content and lowering that on-ramp to invite all types of players and to achieve, you know, I think we look at Amazon and you say, wow, it's really easy to go out, or eBay or Facebook Marketplace. It's really easy to go out and list a product on those websites. It's not so easy to go out to the GDS and list your product. It needs to get easier. That is a model of just simplicity that I think our team, our architecture, our product team looks at and goes, that's a good model. And you think about the scale with which even Airbnb increases the volume of content they have month over month, and you go, that's a pretty good model. I think so. We need to figure out how to acquire at scale and at pace a bit better than we have because of the other side, and it's simplicity, I think, in that. And I'll pause there and pass it.
Yeah, I think at Amadeus we did a lot of coming up for the shortcomings of lack of standardization. No? We did our own parsing engines. We ensure that we can handle the different ways how content is sourced and is shared with us. To me, the future is more about really how can we better personalize, no? How can we, and we heard before ABS, no? How can we adapt also this, our own systems to be able to sell attributes? And how can we make sure that we sell to the customer what they actually expect and what they want, no? So cross-selling tools, personalization, tools that help our travel agencies in the end, which are our customers, to better service their customers, because that's what the end consumer want. No, they want to be serviced, they want to be treated as personalized as possible, and they want to have that great use experience, no, and all of that, and all of that with complete transparency, because they want to know that they booked at the right price, the right hotel.
Yeah, I agree with all those things. I think the other big thing that, if I'm looking at the GDS of the future, it's not going to be cryptic commands. It's not going to be screaming all caps text. It's not going to be, you know, truncated everything, trying to learn 800 amenity codes. It's really simplifying, streamlining, making sure that we are servicing the end customer, the corporations, the end travelers, the people who actually need to consume that content, And that kind of goes back to, the multi-source strategy that Sabre's taking with content services for lodging that we know Amadeus is working on. It's a looking at understanding consumer shopping behavior. And we know there's other rates out there. We know that people are shopping for those other rates. So what can we do as an industry and as an organization to say, we get the pain points, we want to bring everything in-house, make it simpler and easier for you to identify what is unique, communicate the value of the channel to the consumer so that you can kind of protect that business that you're looking for.
So let's continue on this theme, content in particular. So TravelClick actually comes out with a study every year. They interview travel agents around the world, and I feel like the deck continues to repeat itself because the travel agents complain about, of course, first and foremost, content. Why don't we have the same content that's on brand.com? We have to jump out of the GDS to go look at brand.com, and our rates aren't in parity, and why aren't the rates in parity? And if as a hotelier I'm looking all over the board, and the travel agents are calling the call center and booking on brand.com, and we're creating, as hoteliers, we're creating this problem ourselves as well. But Daniel, can you talk a little bit about what Sabre's done with your content for lodging? And then we'll talk a little bit about NDC, right? So IATA came out, and the airlines have really been pushing this enabling richer content delivery.
Sure. Great. So at Sabre, we just launched last year at STX Content Services for Lodging, which is our multi-source platform technology where we're integrating content from multiple sources, GDS, as well as aggregator sources like Booking.com, Expedia, et cetera, normalizing that content and integrating it into the agency workflow through a set of APIs. They could be consumed through our own tools as well as via APIs for in-house booking tools and things like that. The value of that is really huge in that first it's content. We've gone from just a property count perspective, more than tripled the amount of properties that are able to be booked through the Sabre system. There's ease of efficiency in shopping, comparison shopping, so you are getting that apples to apples. There are active segments in the PNR, so for a corporate perspective and for the TMCs, they can maintain duty of care and kind of have that control over the booking, and on and on and on. So I think that where that really comes from is, I think there's still parity challenges. I think we will continue to have challenges with parity. I've got some theories on that I won't get into too much now. But what we're hoping to do is provide that layer of transparency so that you can understand this is the rate that's out there. Here's what the inclusions are. Here's what the value of this particular booking in this channel is, so that the end travelers or the corporations or the TMCs can look at that and say, I am making the best purchasing decision for my customer, and I'm not going to get a phone call that says, but look, I saw a rate that was $20 cheaper on Expedia. Why didn't you book me in that? Now it's, I didn't book that because even though it's $20 cheaper, you don't get loyalty points, you don't get breakfast, it's non-refundable, it has all of these other things that even though it's that same king room, there's a lot of more value associated with that GDS rate. And so that's really what we're trying to showcase and highlight and kind of streamline for our customers.
And I would just add on, I think it's worth noting that the demand, the demand that's coming in from our angle of we need multi-source content, and Travelport was quite early in that initiative with Rooms and More, and putting up literally 650,000 properties in a meta search environment. It was to scratch the itch of the corporates who need a one-stop shop, and we're trying to solve the leakage in their programs. And they needed to have that consistency of display, that retail shop that said, look, you can get it cheaper over there, but that's a cancellation policy and that has no loyalty points and you have to give up breakfast. And to come up with that nuanced display where you can really compare program to program to program is, and in an integrated way, whether it's via an API or whether it's on a UI for an agent desktop or delivered through a corporate booking tool, I think that is the holy grail. And I think a lot of and it's not just about property rate comparison. I think if we could get to the room level comparison, that's a whole different level. But I don't think there's a platform out there that solved that just yet.
Katja?
Yeah. So when Amadeus started to do multi-sourcing 5 years ago, we also completely integrated P&R integration and everything. So what we noticed is not only that we could reach different customers that have not been traditional GDS customers, and then also basically providing a platform for the direct hotel distribution for the chains that they can actually be better compared, no? Because those customers, especially in Europe, they have been using bad banks for a long time. And then they were so stuck in their ways, and then suddenly a platform comes over that shows a B2B comparison, kind of meta search comparison, and then it actually shows that the myth is not true, that rates on GDS are actually more expensive. So we saw that of course we increased bookings coming from the multi-source, but more so what we call the traditional GDS model. Through that, because we actually provided this platform and showed, okay, yes, as was mentioned before, there are loyalty points associated to rate, and we also provide different payment methods, because that's something what the traveler wants. No, sometimes they want to have prepayment, a voucher payment, and so on. And by putting everything on one platform, that made sure that we could actually meet the customer needs, feed the TMCs that started sourcing from everywhere, as well as reach new customers that traditionally have not been on the GDS.
Yeah, and I think just one last topic, and I think we all share this. This isn't something new. You know, from an access to content perspective, the TMCs, the agencies were already booking it. They were already building direct connects. They were already shopping and booking that content. And there was leakage, there was increase in passive segments, there was challenges with duty of care, difficulties in reporting on if their corporations were staying in policy. Like, all of those things were happening, and all of us from the GDS perspective have taken our own turn on how can we solve this problem, and how are we going to help mitigate those challenges and keep things in system so that there's not the requirement, there's not the cost to maintain direct connects, there's not the leakage and the burden of responsibility sitting on the TMCs and the corporations.
But it's funny, it's like we are aggregating a distribution strategy that's trying to fragment. I mean, it's a funny position to be put in when we could really just get it from the source.
Problem solved.
So I was, this is going to make me sound pretty lame, but I was cleaning the house one Saturday, and I decided to put on my earphones and listen to all the Focusrite presentations. And I highly recommend it, actually. I spent Saturday listening to Focusrite and Sunday listening to Skift. So something that caught my attention was, and I hope I'm saying her name right, Miriam Moscovici from BCD Travel sat on stage and said, right, because if you listened to, or if you went to those conferences, it was all about the connected trip, the connected trip, the connected trip, right? That's the buzzword of last year. And she said, the TMCs are going to be the first to get to the connected trip. And I kind of said, oh, that's an interesting thought. So do you guys agree with that?
I don't.
Okay.
I think, you know, everyone's trying to get toward that connected trip. I think a company like a Google is probably going to be the people to get there first, because they've got deep pockets, big R&D budget, extremely talented and smart developers. But I think even more importantly than that, they're not encumbered by mid and back office systems, legacy technology, tech stacks that they're trying to work within, and they can kind of jump beyond a lot of that. With that said, where TMCs have a leg up in some regards is on the profile side. You know, they know that you want to sit in a window seat and that you want the king bed and that you have these very specific, they know all your loyalty numbers, they know all of that information about you as a consumer. Google can find out what you shop for, Amazon can find out what you actually buy, but there's that kind of hybrid. So maybe if my future sightseeing is there, I would say it's going to be a hybrid, maybe a partnership between a TMC and a Google or Amazon of the world to kind of.
I think her point was, right, that you guys have it all. You have the car, you have the air, you have everything. So how can you make this work first?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, there's, you know, what is the connected trip? Is it the experience that a traveler has as they, do discovery and do, their booking and then come home, or when they're in the airport and if something gets delayed and that care of duty kicks in. I mean, from our perspective, there's a lot of players out there generating mobile apps. When we think about how can we support our TMC customers, is it really helping them create another app, or is it infusing them into the super apps that are sort of starting to form and enabling them to drive messages opportunistically or correctly and timely into the right platforms? So when we think about the connected trip, for us, it's about how do we work within the environment as it exists today and leverage the applications like WhatsApp or Messenger or everything that's there in order to create connectedness out of a dispersion of applications.
I believe that the real connected trip only happens if all the players of the industry in the end work together. No? Because yes, everybody has, as mentioned, their own apps, their own technology, but only if there is a will as well to work together and ensure that we share information, we share data, then you can come to the connected trip. And of course, we're in the middle of that, and we're willing to help, because that's also in our interest, all of us, that we get to that the traveler actually we're all travelers, no? We all know how nice it would be to actually have everything in one little app. And so, yeah.
So one thing we know for certain is that we can always expect change in our industry. And as a hotelier, every day I have to anticipate what's going to happen, what change is going to happen. So let's talk a little bit about some of the changes that happened in the industry, or within GDS, I should say. And I'm going to pick on Daniel for a second, because when Daniel came to meet with me for the first time, being assigned to MGM last year, it was his first meeting with me, and I was like, what is this? You're working with Booking.com. What are you doing to me? Like, what is this about? And I loved your answer, and you were very honest. And so let's talk about Sabre's relationship on how you continue to evolve to stay competitive.
Yeah, I think that the question there, it was, we love the GDS. We treat it as an extension of brand. Now all of a sudden you're getting in bed with these OTAs that are the enemy. You're going to shift all of my business away from my direct channel that I love to these horrible indirect channels that cost me all this money, and why are you doing it, and you're ruining everything. It's a very common theme that we heard throughout this process. We at Sabre, to help kind of combat a lot of that was when Tracy Mercer made the decision that this is the direction that we're taking lodging, kind of said, first of all, we're doing this because it's solving a need of our customers and the buy side of the business. They are fed up with building direct connects. They don't have the time and resources, and they're not finding what their customers need in the GDS today. And so how do we solve that? And then I think we worked together through a series of advisory boards over the last, couple of year and a half or so to bring both sides to the table, bring people from the chains and the big brands, bring people from the agencies and TMCs, and say, what are the problems? What are you doing? How's it going to work? And our stance is really the person that wins in this game is the end traveler. And we're not doing it because we're trying to shift business or steal things. We're doing it because there is a need, and the end traveler isn't getting what they want. And it's causing challenges for everyone, and so how can we adjust that and change it? Is that what you wanted me to?
Yes, you did. And I think
I couldn't remember what I said. It was like a year and a half ago. I'm like, is that the really good answer?
But I think he imitated really what I had said to him too very well, so thank you. So some other changes that have taken place is, and this is where I, as a hotelier, went grrr when this happened, but when American Express Fine Hotels and Resorts traditionally booked through the GDS, and then they said, nope, sorry, we're going to start booking through Expedia. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Here's another interesting one. So, what kind of threats are coming to the GDS in the future? Do you think more of these changes are going to happen? What's spawning these changes? What are your thoughts around this?
I guess the biggest threat is if we stop evolving. No, if we stop listening actually to what our hoteliers want and what our customers want, in the end, it's then there's a big threat out there. So if we would just like lean back and say, okay, we've been a GDS for 30 years and we continue just doing what we're doing, then we're probably out of the game very, very quickly, because travel industry evolves. There is no such thing as a siloed view of distribution anymore. So it's not the GDS and the OTAs. It's all mixed up. It's not, TMC is not clean anymore. So there's, as you mentioned, they sourcing from everyone to everyone, so, and selling to everyone. So I think that the biggest threat would actually be saying, okay, yes, I'm happy with what I have, and I'm not looking what could be out there. Like now in new ways of making sure that the hoteliers can distribute more content through ABS, for example, no? Saying upselling opportunities, cross-selling. If we just close our eyes to that, then this would definitely be a threat to us.
Yeah, I think that's great. I would completely agree. I think if we're not adding value in the middle, then by all means go around. I think where we're investing in from platform and content and normalization, and we have a program, Brand Logic, where we're sort of helping hotels fill gaps where their CRS can't even communicate certain things. We're allowing them to give us that data point and inject it back in before it goes to the shelf. We're looking for novel ways, whether it's AI or brute force, to add value in the middle and not just simply regurgitate what's been given, which is probably guilty of the past. That's probably where we started as a business, was just that aggregation point for performance. And I think as we look forward, it's how do we enable the brands to reach the shelves in the full color that as they do on their own website, and to distribute at maximum value. And I think the Expedia, that one component, I think it's leisure, so I'll let it pass as it starts encroaching more on our corporate business. It drives me. It certainly flags concern. And I think if I look forward, I think one of the bigger risks that we can get to, I think, is everyone wants to build their own boiler room, but nobody understands the cost of actually maintaining that boiler room.
That's true.
Yeah, I agree with all those things.
Perfect.
I don't need to expound on that.
It's interesting to me because Calibri Labs over 5 years ago did the cost, probably it's been almost 10 years ago, did the cost per channel study, and GDS was always just had that bad rap about the cost of GDS, and yes, while I have to just do a couple more numbers to explain to you how much the GDS costs, I still am educating people in 2019, 2020 about the cost of GDS, and guess what, guys, it's not what you think it is. So what is some of the, before we go to questions, because there's some good questions here, what is your best advice for hoteliers to drive more GDS business? Because the cost is not, prohibitive, it's not the problem.
I think it's just showing the value. It's being able to differentiate what you're putting into the GDS from a content rate perspective, and being able to clearly communicate what that traveler is going to get, and let them feel confident that the value is in this rate. I'm going to get more bang for my buck booking this GDS than I'm going to get anywhere else. And I think that's just consistency and building that trust.
Yeah, I would say, if you're looking to extract more value out of the corporate demand that we work with, it would be to talk to our account management team. Many of them are here, led by Lynn Malouf, and really just engage with us. Tell us what you're looking for. I mean, we have great data, and we make it accessible to all our hotel partners. You can log in and pivot and see geographies and rate codes, and demand sources, and it is a wealth of opportunity and data if you're willing to navigate through it. And we've got the relationships, obviously, to help you steer through.
Yeah, I absolutely second that. So please talk to the account manager. I have my wonderful team sitting here. So yes, because they can help you also navigate, and that you understand where we are distributing, to who we are distributing, and which way is the which rates should be loaded, and just don't think just of the GDS anymore. Think of a broad distribution platform that can bring you many more customers that you can actually have currently.
All right, we have just under 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna pick my favorite question because this is always asked. what is the future of the green screen? But I, as a hotelier, am going to add to that because I'm not going to let you guys escape out with, well, we have our GUI, because I'll never forget when I first saw the GUI, I expected it to look like Expedia, and it was like, wah, wah, wah. Yeah. And it's still a little wah, wah, wah. So what's the future of the green screen and your GUIs? And I think for a good educational, what percentage of travel agencies are actually using either or at this point?
So I think the future of the green screen is, you go to a financial department on Wall Street, nobody's managing Excel with their mouse. The people that know Excel manage it with their keyboard, and the people that know travel, they like the cryptic commands because they move through that so
I think that's a cop-out.
I mean,
that's
no, it's not a cop-out.
I'm sorry.
There is a world of people who consider this their job, and they're damn good at it. So what we've done is, in order to sort of enable those folks to still drive efficiency on their day-to-day operations, we've basically fused what is the GUI with the cryptic commands. And so you lower the on-ramp, as I said, for the new agents, that the TMCs are having a hard time educating and building classes of new agents to come on and support corporate travel. It's a real thing. You got to train these people. And so we've been enabling our GUIs to support that. Stop there.
Yeah, funnily enough, in Spain, it's still Amadeus cryptic command is part of studies when you study at university tourism. So it's still there. So it's still a very, very efficient way to book flights and hotels. Ours is actually blue now, the screen. So
that's true. That is true.
So some evolution there. And we decided, to us it was important that, for us the cryptic is still only for you hoteliers. So it's only dedupe content, unique content, and we decided that we would only put our multi-sourcing on the graphic user interface. Because we know there are agents out there, especially TMCs and business travel agencies, that know really how to, very well and efficiently to use the cryptic, and they know what they're looking for. And then we built the graphic user interface more for those travel agencies that probably are not, maybe don't have that professional travel agents anymore because of costs, and there are not that many out there. So, and then they can be driven to those kind of graphic user interfaces.
Yeah, and I think, I do think the green screen is going away a little bit. There is still the need for the commands, obviously, and I think, for our Sabre points of sale, we still have the ability to integrate commands that just take the command, translate it, and still return the display graphically, so that you can still kind of find what it is that you're looking for, kind of using some of the scripts and things that you're used to from an agency and TMC perspective, so you don't lose a lot of efficiency. But I do think, I can speak to Sabre, probably 60% or more of our volume is actually coming from our APIs. It's not being booked through the green screen. It's being booked by agencies who are consuming our APIs, and it's probably even higher than that, and building their own UIs or integrating the APIs into their own workflow. So as tools become smarter, companies become more advanced, more players come into the space, it's less about the green screen and more about how can I integrate this content, how can I leverage the value of these APIs and turn it into something that really works for my company. And that's really the direction that I see things going. I could tell you couldn't, if I was just getting started in travel, I would not want to sit down and learn all the GDS commands. I still didn't learn them all.
Yeah.
FYI.
I think those were all really good answers, but I think as a hotelier, I just heard you still need to learn the green screen, and no Ava's not available for hire still. I know you don't, but it's, yeah. All right. Well, we'll have this conversation in another year and see where we're going. All right. How much of the growth in bookings is driven by the multi-source strategy adopted by the main GDS platforms?
So, I referenced a product that we used to have, with Rooms and More, and it's funny because it's not that we see enormous amounts of volume of booking on this content. The content is brought in because hoteliers have fragmented their distribution strategy, and we're simply reaggregating it, as noted. And I think it's not that people want to book that prepaid rate that doesn't include breakfast, that has no loyalty points associated to it. It's that it must be presented in order to win a corporate RFP. It must be presented in order to solve for the TMC workflow. And it must be presented in order for the corporate booking tool to stop having to scratch at more and more APIs in order to solve it themselves. So no, it does not make up, and if you're at a hotel, you probably know the answer to this already, but no, it makes up a fraction of under 5%, I'd say, of the total volume, at least in the analyses that we've done. But it is just about having the one-stop shop, which is the market demand for what I believe is our platforms.
I can second that.
Agreed.
Exactly. Same for us.
So Daniel, they want to hear more about the content services for lodging. So is there any feedback that you have from test agencies, or where you guys, a little bit more detail you can give us on where you're at with that?
Yes. Obviously, if this was your question or you were one of the 5 or so people that voted this up, feel free to find me afterward and I can give you a much more detailed overview. But one of the things to really think through is we have, as we talked about, multiple work streams for integration and implementation of the new product. There's API consumers who are using it for their own booking tools. There's our Sabre Red 360 users who are using our GUI. And then there's, of course, the juggernauts that are the corporate booking tools, Concur, Circos of the world. From an agency perspective that is integrating via 360, that's our first point. Feedback has been really positive. It's really to the point that Ross made earlier. It's the peace of mind that I can see what's out there without having to go outside of my workstation and validate that the rate that I'm trying to book or what I'm doing is what it needs to be, and to kind of keep things honest. I don't want to take up a ton of time on the overview, so find me afterward and I'll give you the full rundown of timelines.
All of the GDS companies are here in full force, so please definitely speak to that. Yes, thank you. We love the support. What is the development in Asia, knowing that China domestic travelers have limited adoption of GDS?
Wow. Mobile only, API.
Yeah, exactly. Self-booking tool, API, and mobile.
Improved payment solutions.
Yeah, that's a good
That's
one.
the other
That's a good
big-
one. That's a good one.
Payments in China is the big question mark, so I think what they said plus payments.
I think there's also something in the Indian market, and I think the LATAM market too, is where you start fracturing out payments and you start sort of putting a hotel on layaway. That's an also very interesting concept that I think we've sort of as an industry have to bake into our DNA a little bit more as we look to sort of serve, in some cases, the unbanked.
All right, I'm gonna squeeze one more in here. Sorry, Ian, I'm gonna take you off your run of show. How have we're gonna end with this one. How have the GDSs improved their value proposition to hotels over the past 5 to 10 years is the ask.
Didn't the first slide answer that question?
Come on, Ross. A little bit more detail there. Let's go. Final question, come on.
I think I referenced it earlier on. I think our value prop in the early days was simply an aggregation point. It was that bookability, the performance, the stability, and the reliability as we served an audience that wasn't just corporate, it was the world, right? And I think today we are no longer simply just passing that through. We offer all of those things that I just mentioned, but I think more and more we are getting into the retailing of content and enabling your brands to reach a unique customer, to remove costs from your systems. And when you go out and you realize that you can't have every agency building their own boiler room, and there really does need to be a consolidation point, that is our value. And more we will help you personalize and reach those travelers in the unique ways that you need to do service to your brand and your bottom line.
Yeah, building a bigger shopping window and making sure that you can be reached by way more customers, and having a broader choice, also in distribution.
Yeah, I think, our big 3 words that we always say at Sabre are retailing, distribution, and fulfillment. And I think that continues to be the core of everything that we've done collectively in the GDS space, is finding ways to improve what we're putting out there, expanding the reach, ensuring that we're matching the needs of the customer with the product that they're looking for, and then making sure that they can book it and fulfill it and support the kind of end-to-end workflow.
Thank you, guys. A big thank you to Katja, Ross, Daniel, and of course the GDSs for being founders and supporters of HEDNA for almost 30 years. So thank you.